When my own kids gifted themselves my house and bled $800,000 off my debit card, I didn't shout. I invited them to dinner, slid an envelope across my kitchen table, and watched a deputy change the locks while they begged on the lawn. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Robert. I'm 67, a grandfather to a little girl who still draws stick figures of us holding hands. 2 months after my knee surgery, while I was shuffling around the living room with a walker and a stubborn pride, my daughter, Hannah, said the house paperwork needed simplifying. My son, Matt, nodded like a metronome. Easier for all of us, Dad. I signed nothing. That is important to remember. I signed nothing. I did not always live with caution circling my thoughts. When Hannah and Matt were small, my world was a clean list: fix the porch rails, coach Saturday soccer, pay the mortgage, kiss my wife's tired forehead, fall asleep to the sound of 2-bedroom doors closing on the far hallway. We were ordinary in the way that makes photographs look honest: cheap birthday cakes, paper crowns, wet mittens melting by the register. I worked steady hours, then overtime, and came home smelling like sawdust and coffee. My wife stacked coupons like origami and stretched every dollar. We built what we could and put off what we could not. Hannah arrived first, solemn and serious from the beginning. She lined up her crayons by color and scolded her stuffed animals for not listening. She would ask me to measure her height on the pantry door, then immediately ask to be measured again, certain the pencil mark could be higher if she stood better. Matt crashed into the world like a wave, loud, hungry, careless, warm. He could talk a neighbor into a second popsicle while I was still tying my shoes. They were different but tightly knotted to each other. When one scraped a knee, the other limped. It was not complicated to love them. We were not a house of speeches. We were a house of practical promises: your lunch will be there, your ride will be on time, your bedtime story will be finished, the light in the hallway will be left on until you are asleep. I believed in a simple math: steady effort in, steady security out. I did not plan for the kind of loss that makes you rewrite your math. When my wife got sick, the house learned to whisper. The dishwasher was run at odd hours. The kids tiptoed. I sat with a cracked mug in hand and counted pills. Hannah learned to cook 3 dinners in rotation and kept a notebook of questions for the doctor. Matt became the entertainer, draping blankets into tents in the living room to make his mother laugh. After she died, we did not talk about moving on. We talked about moving at all. We ate at the big table with an empty chair. I made a promise to be enough. The kids grew into their adult skins like shoes that almost fit. Hannah was the first to go. College, then a job with people who spoke in words like efficiency and transfer risk, then Elias, Mr. Collins, with his expensive watch and tidy opinions. She started calling it the property, not the house, and when I would say, "Remember when you and your brother slept under the treehouse on the 4th of July, she would smile like I had offered a story from a museum she had already visited. Matt took longer to settle. He could never sit in the same job for 2 Christmases. He was always on the verge of a promotion, of a deal, of a big sale. He borrowed like a breeze, 50 here, 500 there, promises folded into a wallet and forgotten. When he called me the Rock, he meant it as a compliment and a plan. He often brought me forms I did not need and gadgets I did not want, and he would install them with a flourish. "You are modern now, Dad." I stayed hopeful longer than I should have. A parent's hope is its own kind of illness, slow and stubborn. When Hannah suggested setting my bills to paperless, I said yes because she is good with forms. When Matt offered to link my card to a delivery service, just in case, I said yes because my knee had started to ache by the afternoon and the grocery store felt farther away every month. When Hannah said we should streamline accounts and consolidate alerts, I listened because her tone was the same one she used when she was little and reminded me to bring an umbrella. We did not break all at once. We stretched and thinned. Calls turned into texts and texts into delayed replies. Holidays became negotiations. We will do breakfast with you and dinner with his parents. We will swing by after the second nap if traffic is light. They spoke to me like I was fragile. I let them because I wanted to be needed. I settled into my routines, tea in the evening, the 6 o'clock news, sanding the rail of the back steps because it always splinters after winter. I loved my granddaughter, Lily, with a clean, uncomplicated love. She made the house sound like it used to, piano key laughter, small feet on tile, crayons rolling under chairs. Then my knee finally gave out and the doctor scheduled surgery. Everyone was very kind, and very helpful. Hannah stopped by with clipboards and a tote bag full of labeled folders. Matt took my phone and updated apps. I let them fuss. I told myself it was a short season. I told myself they were careful because they cared. And that's when, 2 months later, the stitches were gone and I was still learning to trust the new joint. They sat in my living room and said the paperwork for the house had gotten too complicated. They spoke in the soft, deliberate language people use when they want to get something past you without looking like they are pushing. It is just simplifying, Dad, Hannah said. It will be easier for all of us, Matt said. I didn't agree. I told myself a hard thing I had avoided for years: love is not the same as trust. I would love my children until the last light left my eyes, but I would not hand them the keys to my house or my accounts on faith. At least, not now. And then it happened. The money vanished first. I logged in one evening to send my granddaughter Lily her usual piano lesson money and found a number that did not make sense: $14,382. 3 days earlier, it had been $800,000 and change, savings from selling an old rental and the last of my retirement. I stared until the screen blurred, then wiped my glasses and stared again. 800,000. Transfers, withdrawals, swipes. All authenticated by my card. The list marched down the page like a quiet confession: hardware, electronics, fuel, cash from an unfamiliar ATM, each line a small bite taken out of a life I had built $1 at a time. Now I couldn't trust my children completely. Not until I knew who had done what. I could feel my old instincts waking up, the ones that kept this roof over us after their mother died: count everything, write everything, believe what can be proved. It felt disloyal and necessary at the same time, like putting a lock on a door inside your own chest. I zoomed in on the bank ledger until the numbers filled the screen. There were charges in places I had not been since before the surgery: big box stores across town, a contractor supply a county over, 3 withdrawals for a neat round amount that sounded like someone testing a limit. The notation, card present, appeared again and again. My hands, which had not been farther than the mailbox, lay still on the table. Shame flushed up my neck, an old man's heat, and then anger cooled it. I took a pen from the jar, pulled a grocery receipt from my wallet, and started copying dates and times. I printed the statements. I took photographs of the screen with my phone in case someone decided to make the numbers behave differently tomorrow. I phoned Hannah. She answered on the second ring with that careful voice she uses when she thinks she is managing a situation. I told her the balance, the transactions, the dates. She sounded confused in a way that felt performed. "Dad, you must have misread something. You always said online banking was fussy. I could hear a faint tapping in the background, like a keyboard or a restless foot. She suggested I clear my browser, restart the app, try a different device. She told me not to worry before I had even said I was worried. That word, fussy, stuck in my ear like a seed. I sent screenshots to our family text and asked if anyone had used my card. Matt replied with a thumbs up, the little yellow hand that is supposed to mean everything is fine. No words. No question. Just that. The kind of response you give to deflect rather than to answer. I remembered him at 16, promising to put gas in the car and bringing it back with the needle flat on empty, all smile and assurance. My chest tightened in the same old place. I put the phone face down and let the room get quiet enough for me to hear my own breathing. I walked through the transactions again, slowly, like a man counting steps on a dark staircase. A purchase for an expensive power tool I had never needed. A new phone paid in full at a mall kiosk I could not name. Food delivery from an address that was not mine. The withdrawals were the worst. Money turned into absence in a handful of minutes, 3 visits to an ATM I had never used. The account history showed alerts marked red, though I had not seen a single one. The realization settled over me, heavy and inevitable. Someone who knew my habits had been moving through my life like it was a familiar room. Someone who counted on the fact that I was tired, medicated, trusting, and slow. I stood, careful of my knee, and turned off the kettle that had begun to shriek. The sound cut out, and the house went back to its old, steady breathing. I told myself again, out loud this time so the words could not slip away, I will not trust anyone fully until I see the truth. I did not sleep much that night. The house made its old, friendly noises and I sat at the kitchen table with a pen, a stack of printer paper, and a feeling like standing on a dock watching your boat drift loose. If they were counting on me to be confused, I would be precise. If they were counting on me to be slow, I would start early. I wrote 3 sentences at the top of the first page and underlined them: do not accuse. Document everything. Control the locks, on doors, on money, on information. I made folders out of manila envelopes and wrote names across the fronts with a heavy hand: bank, cards, phone, mail, house, people. Into bank went printed statements, the screenshots, and a list of every transaction that was wrong in the order they appeared. Into cards went the card number, the dates I received replacements in the past, and a reminder to ask for a new number and a fresh PIN in person. Into phone went a to-do list, review text messages, call logs, saved passwords, and check whether trusted devices and 2-step codes had been rerouted. Into mail went a note to visit the post office and check for any change of address forms or holds I had not requested. House got a single line: check title in person at recorder's office. People held a clean sheet waiting for names, job titles, direct numbers. I wanted a record of who said what, when they said it, and what they promised to do. Then I wrote out a plan. Morning, bank branch when the doors open. Ask for the branch manager, sit where they can see me, and keep my voice steady. Bring identification. Bring copies. Ask for a fraud report to be opened and for a printout of transactions with terminal locations and any notes about camera availability at the ATMs. Ask to reissue my debit card and to place a hold on any outgoing transfers. Request paper statements restarted and alerts sent to both my phone and my landline. Ask for a letter stating the account is under investigation. Afternoon, county recorder's office to pull the deed. Request a certified copy of any recent filings on my parcel number. Photograph the screen if they let me. Evening, phone calls, but not to Hannah and Matt. To a lawyer. To the credit bureaus to place a fraud alert. To my insurance agent to check whether my homeowner's policy had any coverage for theft or forgery of checks or cards. It felt like building a fence one fence post at a time. Before I went to bed, I did small things that felt like sandbags stacked against a slow flood. I took my checkbook, passport, social security card, and the folder marked house and put them in the old metal lockbox I had not used in years. I carried it to the garage and slid it behind the toolbox. I unplugged the smart speaker Matt had insisted on setting up and put it in the hall closet. I changed the password on my email to something long and ugly and wrote it down on a slip of paper that I taped under the kitchen drawer. In my email, I looked for bank messages and found exactly none for the last month. Then I checked the rules and filters section I had never known existed. There it was, a rule forwarding anything with my bank's name into a folder titled Receipts and marking it red. I took a photo of the screen with my old flip phone for good measure, then deleted the rule and sat there breathing while the inbox filled with a month of warnings I had never seen. My stomach turned hot and then cold. I wrote email rule in the phone folder and underlined it twice. I promised myself one more thing, would not ask my children another question until I spoke to people whose job it was to answer mine. I would not give Hannah room to soothe me into inaction or let Matt turn a direct question into a joke. If they called, I would be polite and brief. Working on my knee therapy, I would say, "Let us talk this weekend." I felt disloyal practicing those words, and then I felt oddly proud. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are doors that lock from the inside. At dawn I made coffee and put on the good shirt my wife used to iron on Sunday nights. The bank opened at 9. I was in the parking lot at 8:45 with my notebook and the folder marked bank. I wrote the time I walked in and the name on the tag of the first person who greeted me. The branch manager had the careful face of someone who sees trouble all morning and calls it by its proper name. I slid the statements across the desk and kept my hands still. I asked for a fraud report and for copies of the card present details. She printed a list with addresses and terminal IDs that looked like license plates. I asked whether any of those machines had cameras and if the bank could request stills. "We can submit a request," she said, and I wrote her words down exactly, along with the form number she cited. I requested my debit card be cancelled and a new one issued, the PIN changed in person, and a temporary daily withdrawal limit set to 0. We added a verbal password to the account that only I would know, not my birthday, not my dog's name, not anything anyone would guess. "Paper statements," I said. "Everything, please." She clicked a few boxes. "And, Mr. Keene," she lowered her voice, "we can place a hold on recent outgoing transfers while we investigate." I felt something in my chest loosen by a small degree. "Do that," I said. "And please print a letter stating the account is under investigation, with today's date." She did, and I slid it into the folder like a token from a fair I had not expected to attend. From the bank I drove to the post office. I asked the clerk to check whether any holds or changes had been placed on my address. He tapped and frowned. "A temporary hold was requested last month," he said. "Online." He printed the date and a confirmation number, and I copied both. I cancelled the hold. The clerk's frown softened when I explained I had been out of surgery and did not remember requesting any change. "It happens," he said, a plain kindness that made my throat tighten for a quick second. Into the mail folder went a receipt and a note to call later for a supervisor's printout if needed. The county recorder's office had that dusty cold air old buildings carry. I gave the clerk my parcel number and my name. She squinted at her monitor and then blinked as if the screen had surprised her. There was a filing last month, she said. A quitclaim deed. I kept my face still and asked for a copy and a certified copy. When the papers slid across to me, I felt the odd sensation of meeting my own forgery, my name twisted just enough to pass to a stranger in a hurry. The notary's stamp meant nothing to me. I photographed the signature, the date, the seal, and the page where my supposed transfer handed my house to the two names I had whispered to sleep for years. My hands did not shake. I thanked the clerk and wrote, "Quiet title action," in the house folder even though I was not yet sure what it meant. I knew I would be asking for it. Back home, I sat again at the table and started calling. I put the credit bureaus on speaker, one by one, and placed a fraud alert on my file. I asked them to mail me confirmation letters because paper has a way of holding its ground that email does not. I called my homeowner's insurance and asked whether my policy touched anything related to theft or fraud. The agent said it was narrow but asked me to send a police report once I had one. I had not filed yet. That would come after I spoke to a lawyer. I wrote "police report" after consult in the people folder. Finding a lawyer felt like choosing a mechanic when the car makes a sound you cannot describe. I called the Bar Association referral line and asked for someone who handled elder financial abuse and real estate fraud. They gave me 3 names and I wrote each one down, then called the first. The receptionist asked if I could come in the next day. I said I could. "Bring any documents you have," she said, and added, "Do not sign anything before you come." I almost laughed at that, and then I did not. "I sign nothing," I said. "I will bring everything." Before I made dinner, I took a slow walk through my house, touching the objects I had touched 1,000 times, door frames, the back of a chair, the banister smooth where my children's hands used to slide. I felt foolish for a second, and then I felt steady. This was mine. It had been mine through storms and repairs and birthdays that arrived like clockwork. The plan on my table was not a crusade, it was housework. Sweep, sort, mend, lock. I was not angry the way I had been the night before. I was something quieter and sharper than anger. I was ready. My phone buzzed with a message from Hannah asking about my knee and whether I needed anything from the store. I typed slowly. "I am managing. I will be resting this week." Matt sent a link to a video of Lily at her piano, her small back straight, her fingers halting and brave. I watched it twice, then 3 times, and let the right feeling settle over the wrong one. I added a new folder to the stack and wrote Lily across the front. Inside I put a single page with a sentence at the top, "Protect her future." Then I set my alarm for early and put the pen back in its jar. The work had begun. Before I stepped out the door, I made a different kind of list, what justice would look like once I knew. I tried on futures like coats, if it was Hannah, if it was Matt, if it was both, and I measured each one by a simple rule I could live with: no shouting, no scenes, no favors. Consequences that fit the act. My revenge would not be a clever trick or a late-night ambush. It would be paperwork and sunlight. Signatures undone by signatures. Locks changed. A chair left empty on purpose. If it was Hannah, I would not let her glide past me on phrases like miscommunication and "we were just helping." I would put her in a room with a banker, a lawyer, and a judge and let the timestamp speak. I would file the reports that turn stories into cases: elder financial abuse, forgery, recording a false instrument. I would ask for restitution in full, not a promise, not a payment plan she could narrate to Elias while she stirred a pot and smiled. If the law gave me the choice to press charges, I would press them, not because I hate my daughter, but because I loved the woman she used to be enough to insist the truth put a hand on her shoulder. If it was Matt, I would not let him grin his way around it like a parking ticket. He has always trusted in his charm like a tool he could pull from his pocket. I would take the problem away from charm. I would collect the ATM stills, the terminal IDs, the delivery addresses, and I would lay them out like a map even he could not pretend not to see. I would ask for the same things: charges, restitution, a record with his name on it that would not laugh with him. If he wanted to talk about second chances, I would point at the ledger. Second chances were the withdrawals on Thursday. Whatever came next would be math: you took it, you return it, with interest if the judge allows. If it was both, then it would be simple because it would be clear. No one to protect from the other. No split loyalties to wrestle in the dark. I would put them at the same table and give the same speech to two faces that carry my eyes. I would have a deputy there, not as a threat but as a fact. Locks would change that day. The deed would be frozen and then unwound by the same county that let it slide through. They would not cross my threshold until a court said my house was safe again, and then only to collect what belonged to them in a box, with a list. I decided there would be no private, family resolutions, no quiet deals in my driveway. The theft was public in the only way that matters: it left footprints in systems bigger than us. So the remedy would be public, too. Reports filed. Orders served. A complaint against the notary. A fraud alert on my credit that hums like a fence at the edge of a field. Their employers would learn what any background check could teach and what their own judgment could decide. That is not vindictiveness, it is how truth travels. I drew a hard line around Lily. She would never hear me run her parents down. She would hear me say the facts when she is old enough for them, and she would read what happened in clear sentences, not whispered accusations. I would set up a trust that does not depend on anyone's good mood. If the court asked me what outcome I wanted, I would say this: the money returned, the deed scrubbed clean, protective orders that make future attempts expensive and short, and a space to live the rest of my life without looking over my shoulder at my own door. I thought about disinheritance, and it felt like breaking a bone to set it straight. The decision held anyway. I would update my will and move the house into a trust with rules that were dull on purpose: no early access, no loans, no borrowing against. If my children wanted to know why, I would hand them the certified copy of the forged deed and let them read the reason in the margin where their names appeared and mine did not. I promised myself I would not speak one reckless word I would have to eat later. I would be exact. I would keep every voicemail and save every text, even the ones that tried to bait me into saying something that could be twisted into permission. I would not threaten, I would notify. I would not plead, I would schedule. I would not warn, I would serve. The only speech they would get from me would be the one that begins, per my attorney, and ends with a date and a time. And if they tried to cry at my door or argue on my lawn, would not mistake volume for sincerity. I would point to the paper in my hand and the badge on the deputy's chest and say, calmly, "This is what happens next." Because revenge, when it is right-sized and honest, is just this: returning the world to the way it should have been before someone's greed bent it. I am not a cruel man. I am a careful one. And when I find out which of my children stepped across the line, I will show them where it is, and I will make them feel it. I had a judge's signature, a banker's freeze, and a deputy on the calendar. The papers in my envelope felt heavier than paper should. I ironed a tablecloth that did not need it and set 3 plates, then moved 1 fork a fraction so it lined up with the grain in the wood. The house had that clean, late afternoon smell: soap, old pine, a thread of onion from the stew I had simmering because things taste honest when they are simple. I put Lily's crayon drawing back on the fridge with the strong magnet, the one shaped like an apple from a field trip she told me about twice. I checked the clock and then the door and then the clock again. Matt arrived first. He always did. He knocked once the way people knock on their own doors, then came in with his shoulders wide and his voice bigger than the room. "Old man," he said, grinning, and the word was supposed to be affection. He smelled faintly of a cologne he had not paid for. He set a bottle of wine on the counter like an offering, the exact bottle I had bought last Christmas and forgotten to open, my handwriting still on the label, a small star next to the date. His eyes skimmed the kitchen, the fixtures, the new anti-slip mat by the sink. He always notices the edges of things and misses their centers. Hannah came 7 minutes later, punctual by her own standards. She carried a store-bought salad with the plastic dome still fogged and her purse pressed tight against her side. Her coat was good wool, the color of rainwater. She walked in and kissed my cheek like we were careful with each other. "Hi, Dad," she said, and her voice was warm but pitched a little high, the way people talk when they are stepping over something. When she saw the plates, she smiled in a small, tidy way and straightened the salt shaker without knowing she was doing it. We sat. I ladled stew into bowls and handed out thick bread and kept my hands calm. Matt talked first, about traffic, about a guy at work who was clueless, about how he had been just about to swing by anyway. He ate like a man who wanted to be elsewhere. His knee bounced under the table, a fast, nervous metronome. Hannah asked about my knee, soft and sweet, eyes on my face like a nurse, not a daughter. She cut her bread into precise squares before buttering any of them. She only does that when she is thinking hard. I watched the way their eyes moved. Matt avoided the fridge where the drawing hung. He always looks away from anything that asks him to be still. Hannah's eyes flicked to my phone on the counter, then the envelope near the centerpiece, then back to me. I could feel the space between us like a seam you could rip if you pulled hard enough. We ate until the clink of spoons on bowls was the only sound left. I asked small questions about Lily's recital and whether the rain last week had found a way into Hannah's basement again. I watched their answers settle into the air, Hannah's careful, Matt's fast, both of them bright like pennies. Then I wiped my mouth with my napkin and set it down very flat. "I want to talk about the house," I said. I kept my voice level, the way you talk when you are reading a recipe out loud. Hannah's smile held. "Of course," she said, in the same tone she uses when flight attendants ask if she wants anything to drink. Matt lifted his chin a fraction, the starting bell in his body. "It is going to be simple," I said, and slid the envelope across the table. The paper made a dry, practical sound against the cloth. Hannah's hand hovered, then took it. Her fingers were steady. She is at her strongest in the first 5 seconds of any bad thing. She pulled out the first page and began to read. I watched the change happen like watching a photograph develop, the slight tightening at the corner of her mouth, the blink where there had not been a blink a moment before. She turned to the second page. Matt leaned in, the grin still in place by habit. "What is this?" he asked, almost laughing. The laugh did not find a place to land. "It is a temporary restraining order," I said. "It freezes any transfer or encumbrance of this house until the court hears the matter." Matt's face moved through 3 expressions so quickly they stepped on each other: amusement, confusion, offense. He put a forefinger in the air, as if to make room for words that would fix it. Hannah's eyes were on the judge's signature. I could see her reading the name twice, the way people check a label before they buy something expensive. She put the first pages down and lifted the next. The bank's letter. The fraud report number. The file number from the recorder's office. She swallowed, and the sound of it was very loud to me. "Dad," she started, and then stopped. "Do not," I said, and I hated how gentle I sounded. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Do not say it was a misunderstanding. Do not say the word simplify." Matt sat back and spread his hands, showing his palms the way magicians do when they want you to watch the wrong thing. "This is over the top," he said. "You could have just asked us." "I did," I said. "I asked the bank. I asked the county. They answered." There is always a moment when people decide what kind of person they are going to be in a room where truth shows up with a name tag. Hannah decided first. She set the papers down very carefully so the corners lined up, and when she looked at me, there was a shine in her eyes that was not crying yet. "We were trying to protect you," she said. The sentence came out thin and practiced, like a ribbon pulled from a spool. "By taking my house," I said. I kept my hands folded so I would not point. Matt leaned forward, elbows on the table, and the smell of his cologne came up warm from his collar. "No one took anything," he said. The air quotes were audible. I turned my head and looked at the clock. The second hand slid past the 12 with that quiet tick that is more feel than sound. Right on time, there was a knock on the door, polite, measured. 1-2. I stood and my chair made a small noise against the floor that made Hannah flinch the way people do when a plate slips but does not break. In the hallway, the deputy waited with his hat in his hand, his uniform clean but tired. You can always tell when someone has spent the day saying the same hard sentence. Beside him, the locksmith stood with his case, his face blank in the way you learn when your job puts you inside other people's small disasters. "Evening, Mr. Keene," the deputy said. "We can do this quickly." Hannah stood up so fast her chair bumped the table. "You called the police?" Her voice had broken in it now, a real crack. Small color climbed into her cheeks. It made her look like she did when she was 8 and found out about the tooth fairy. "No," I said, and found a steady in me again. "I called the court. The deputy works for the court." Matt laughed once, a short bark, his face going red under it. "This is a family matter," he said to the deputy, as if that settled anything. The deputy nodded like he had heard that sentence 100 times. "Sir, we are here to enforce a temporary order. No property is to be removed. Locks will be changed." He looked at me. "We will be quick." Hannah's eyes moved to the locksmith's case, then to the front door, then back to the papers on the table like she could shuffle the sequence of the evening and make it come out in a different order. She pressed her lips together and tried one more sentence. "Dad, please. We can talk about this." "We are talking," I said, and I let the softness leave my voice. "We are talking with everyone who needs to be here." The locksmith worked. The sound of the drill was smaller than you would think, a neat, professional hum. Matt paced, 3 steps forward, 3 back, the way he used to pace behind the couch when he had broken a window and was waiting for me to come home. His hands found his pockets and then could not stay there. He looked once at the fridge and then away, and the errant glance hit me in the chest even as the rest of him made me tired. Hannah sat down again, the good wool coat still on, and picked up the papers like a woman standing up in a current. She turned pages very carefully, the way she reads anything with a number on it. Her mouth moved without sound once, twice, as if trying out arguments she knew would not hold. When she finally spoke, the words were soft and plain. "We did not think you would do this." I nodded. I know, I said. That was the problem. The deputy finished explaining what would happen next: keys collected, copies destroyed, a receipt for the change, a reminder of the hearing date. He spoke with that respectful, even tone that carries both sides of the situation without cutting its fingers. When he handed me the new keys, the metal was warm from his hand. I do not know why that detail mattered, but it did. Warm is different than cold. Matt stopped pacing. He looked at me hard, and under the heart I saw something like fear, the small boy who once slipped his hand into mine in a parking lot without thinking. He opened his mouth, then shut it. He settled for anger because it was easier to hold. "You are making a mistake," he said. The sentence fell flat between us. Hannah folded the last page and set the stack back in the envelope. She smoothed the front of her coat as if it had wrinkled in a way the world would notice. When she spoke again, her voice was very level. "We will get a lawyer," she said. "You should," I said. "Bring them to the hearing. We will all sit down together." The locksmith snapped his case shut. The deputy tipped his hat the slightest bit, the way men do when they wish they could make something gentler and know they cannot. They left, and the house took a deep breath around us. I cleared the bowls because I did not know what to do with my hands. The scrape of ceramic was the only sound until Hannah said, almost to herself, "I was trying to make things easier." It was not an argument. It was a confession with the hope of being mistaken for an excuse. I stacked the bowls in the sink and turned off the light over the stove. The kitchen dimmed to that soft, evening half-light that shows fingerprints and corners if you know where to look. I turned back to them and found my voice in the place where the tired lives and the steady begins. "This is what easier looks like now," I said. "Clear lines. Clear locks. Clear dates. We will sort the rest where it belongs." Hannah nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible bow to the inevitable. Matt looked at the floor, then at the door, and I could feel him reaching for the version of this night where he was already gone. They left with their coats closed high and their eyes lowered just enough not to meet mine at the threshold. After the door clicked shut, I stood for a moment with my hand on the new deadbolt, feeling the smooth turn of it under my palm. The house settled again, and under the quiet I could hear my own heart slow to a pace I recognized. I washed the bowls. I dried them. I put them away where they have always gone. Then I took the envelope back out and set it on the center of the table like a place card. Not for them. For the life that was sitting down again where it belonged. After they left, the stew smell thinned and the house settled into the old evening hush that used to mean homework and baths. I stood a long time with my palm on the new deadbolt, testing the turn until the motion felt like a promise instead of a reaction. The envelope sat in the center of the table like a square moon. I poured the last inch of tea. It had gone cold. I drank it anyway. I asked myself if bringing a deputy into my kitchen had been cruel. The question arrived wearing my late wife's voice, which is how I know I should answer it carefully. Cruelty is what takes without asking. I had done the opposite. I had asked the law to stand where my anger wanted to stand, because the law keeps its voice level. Still, there is a bruise to seeing your children meet a uniform at your door. I pressed on the bruise and waited for the lesson under it. The lesson was simple: the people who broke trust do not get to decide the terms upon which it is repaired. Revenge felt loud when I said the word last week. Tonight it felt smaller, plainer. I had been picturing a clean courtroom answer, a crisp order, a deputy's knock. Now I pictured quieter work after the gavel, statements adjusted, liens cleared, title repaired, interest calculated, wills rewritten, locks that did not need to be tested again. It struck me that winning in public is the easy part, winning in private is what keeps the floor from tilting under your feet. I set 2 chairs at the table back where they belonged and sat in the third, the head of the table I built when I still thought I would always be outnumbered by children. I laid out 2 paths and made myself walk down both. The first path was hard and bright: press every charge I could, push the case into the district attorney's office with a neat binder, accept whatever sentences a judge thought fit, and let the record carry their names the way the forged deed tried to carry mine. The cost would be the sound of Lily asking why her mother or father could not make the school play, and the stain of a holiday where a child learns what court dates do to calendars. The benefit would be clean lines, a message no one could misunderstand, and a fence high enough to keep my house quiet until I am gone. The second path was hard and quiet: keep the civil cases tight, demand restitution and legal fees in writing, force the deed back into my name, and hold criminal charges in reserve like a storm warning. Make one offer through my lawyer, not my mouth: full written admission, funds returned within a fixed number of days, a signed agreement to stay off my property and out of my accounts forever, and proof of financial counseling paid by them, not me. If any piece failed, the file would walk to the prosecutor without another conversation. The cost would be living with the knowledge that mercy can be read as softness. The benefit would be protecting Lily from the worst heat of her parents' choices while building a wall that still holds. I ran a thumb along a nick in the table where Matt, at 5, had stabbed it with a fork to show me how strong he was. There is a kind of pride that turns to rot if you do not cut it out. Mine had been the kind that told me I could hold the house and the children and the grief with the same hand forever. I could not. So I would use both hands now, one to hold the law, one to hold the future. I took out a legal pad and wrote the rules of my fight again, but different this time. No speeches. No hallway negotiations. All contact through counsel. Every promise in ink with a date and a penalty. If there is an apology, it must arrive attached to a cashier's check and a signature. If there is a threat, it goes in the binder under a tab marked by the day and time. I would not argue with my children in the yard or on the phone. I would let the calendar and the court reporter do my arguing for me. I also wrote a small addendum that surprised me: room for return. Not to my accounts or my door, but to something that looks like decency. If they ever stood in a courthouse hallway and said, "We did it," without a comma after that sentence, I would not spit when I said my name inside that room. I would still ask for the money back, for fees, for orders. But I would not add decorative punishments on top of the necessary ones. That was the only mercy I had to offer, and it would be honest. I made a list of practical steps for the morning after the hearing, because fights feel less like fights when they are also chores. Quiet title action filed and followed through to final judgment. New deeds recorded into a trust with me as trustee and a corporate successor lined up for when I am not here. New powers of attorney drafted with strict limits. A post office box for any financial mail. A safe bolted to the floor of the closet, not just a lockbox behind the toolbox. Cameras pointed toward the driveway and the mailbox. A letter to the notary board filed, because the woman who stamped someone else's hand over my name should answer for it in front of her own. I reconsidered one more thing: what I would say to the judge if asked whether I wanted jail. The truth is that I wanted a kind of silence that jail cannot buy. Jail makes noise in a family that lasts for years. What I want is a quieter fate, restitution paid, a public record that will follow them to any forum that asks about honesty, a long distance between their hands and my doorknobs, and a set of consequences that keeps them busy earning back what they tried to take. If the judge thought a night or a month would teach something money cannot, I would not argue. But I would not beg for it either. I would ask for what can be measured and checked. I got up and walked the rooms with the new keys in my pocket. Keys have a sound, they talk to a house when they bump against your thigh. In the hallway I stopped at the pantry door and looked at the pencil marks where Hannah used to stand tall twice in a row. I pictured the version of her who lined up crayons and asked good questions. I pictured the version of Matt who bounced on his heels while a kite pulled hard on a string. A father's heart is not a courthouse. It is a museum and a workshop and a fence and, sometimes, a locked drawer. I would keep the pictures. I would keep the fence. I would lock the drawer. At the kitchen table I wrote 2 short letters that would live in my lawyer's file. The first was to my children. It was not an apology. It was not a threat. It was a list of terms and a deadline and a line that said, all further communication should be directed to counsel. The second was for Lily many years from now, for the day she will ask the right question instead of the easy one. I wrote the plain facts and the choices we all made, including mine. I wrote, I loved you then and I love you now, and then I wrote, I loved your parents too, and I loved them enough to stop them. Somewhere outside, a car door shut and a dog barked twice. The refrigerator motor clicked on and hummed its steady hymn. I put the letters in the envelope with the orders and the copies, and the stack felt like a small, careful engine. I turned out the kitchen light and watched the window go dark, my face reflected over the yard. I looked like my father. He was a quiet man who believed in making things square. In bed, my knee ached the way wood aches when it has been planed and asks to rest flat. I put a hand over it, then over my chest, and breathed for the count my therapist gave me after my wife died. I had chosen my fight. I had chosen its borders and its weight. Tomorrow I would live inside those borders and carry that weight to the courthouse and back. Tonight the house was locked with keys that were mine, and that was enough to sleep. Morning came in clean and ordinary, the kind of light that makes a kitchen look honest. I stacked the binder, the envelope, and my lawyer's card on the hall table, then set a small notebook beside them with today's date written at the top. The coffee tasted right. I took 2 slow steps to the window and watched my breath fog the glass, a habit from winters long gone. For a minute I believed the day might stay this gentle. The doorbell pressed twice in a quick, practiced rhythm. Hannah first, of course, holding 2 takeout coffees and a paper bag spotted with grease like an offering. Matt behind her, bouncing on his heels as if he had a number to catch. I opened the inner door and left the storm door locked. We were not going to pretend. Morning, Dad, Hannah said, smiling with her mouth and not her eyes. We wanted to talk before everyone makes things hard. Matt leaned in so close the storm door nudged his jacket. Let's cut the nonsense, he said, grinning like we were about to tell a joke together. We can handle this right now. I nodded once and kept my hands in my pockets so they would not reach for anything. All communication goes through counsel, I said. I pushed my lawyer's card into the metal tray at the base of the storm door so it slid toward their shoes. You can give that to your attorney. Hannah held up the coffees higher, as if sugar and heat could sweeten the paper between us. Dad, let us not lawyer this to death, she said softly. We brought a few things to sign, just to clean up the misunderstanding before the hearing. Matt produced a manila folder like a magician pulls a scarf, quick, casual, meant to distract. He fanned the pages just enough for me to catch the top lines: affidavit of gift, memorandum of family settlement, corrective quitclaim deed. My own name already typed where the signature line would wait. No, I said. I did not raise my voice. The storm door glass held my face the way a pond holds the sky. Matt's grin thinned. "You are overreacting," he said. "An injunction is just paper. Everyone knows notaries make it legal." He tapped the folder with a finger that had never spent a morning at the recorder's counter. "We can unrecord the deed by email." Hannah gave him a small, warning look and then smoothed her voice. "We will replace what was used," she said. "Most of it was necessary. Contractors, repairs, things you would not understand online. Elias can send a wire today." She paused, and the pause wore calculation. "If you withdraw the complaint." "Funds do not return themselves by promise," I said. "They return by cashier's check and court order." Matt laughed once, too loud for the morning. "You needed us, and you still do," he said. "You do not know your passwords half the time. You think a filter is a coffee machine." He pointed with his chin toward my mailbox. "You even had your mail held for weeks." I did not look at the box. I watched Hannah instead. She flinched at the slip. "We handled the hold because you were overwhelmed," she said quickly. "It is called being responsible." There it was, the admission disguised as virtue. I felt the click it made in my mind and laid it gently in the notebook it belonged to. Hannah tried again, the nurse voice back on. "We can do a life estate," she said. "You keep the right to live here. We manage the asset. That way you are safe and the property is properly handled." "By the people who tried to take it," I said. She swallowed. "We did not try to take anything. You are making this adversarial." Matt leaned sideways and peered past me like a child looking for cookies. "Is Lily's picture still on the fridge?" he asked, as if we were standing in any other morning. Then his voice dropped. "She will be so confused if her grandpa makes her parents go to court." There was the sinister part, using a child's name like a key. I let it pass me without catching on its teeth. "Lily will be fine," I said. "We will keep her out of this." Matt's grin finally fell off his face. He stepped closer again so that the storm door glass flexed the smallest amount against his knuckles. "Here is how this goes," he said, lower now. "You sign the corrective deed and the affidavit that these were gifts, your idea, actually, and we all walk in smiling. Or Hannah files for guardianship this afternoon and tells the judge you are not competent. You have been on pain pills. You are confused all the time. You called the cop at court last night, for God's sake." Hannah's head turned sharply. "Matt," she hissed, but she did not say he was lying. She looked back at me. The kindness in her face had become neat and empty. "We will do the guardianship if we must," she said, evenly. "It is not personal." Ignorance announced itself as confidence. "Guardianship is not a stick you swing because you want a faster closing," I said. "It is a process with an evaluator who will speak to my doctor and read my file and test my memory. He will not find what you need him to." I breathed once. "All future threats belong to the file. Do not bring them to my doorstep." Matt's cheeks went blotched. "You think a judge cares?" he said. "People sign for their kids all the time. Banks do not claw back a dime if we say you authorized it." Hannah lifted the coffees, then set them on the porch rail with a careful hand. The lids hissed. Condensation gathered at their rims and fell in fat drops to the painted wood so that two dark circles bloomed between us. "Last chance," she said. It was not begging. It was transaction. "You take down the injunction. We return part of the money now and the rest over a year. The deed stays with us. We will let you stay here as long as you live. That is fair. Fair is the money returned in full, the deed voided, and the two of you off my accounts forever, I said. Fair is court. Matt slapped the folder against his thigh. You are about to make this very ugly. It already is, I said. He leaned in one last time, breath sharp with coffee he had not brought for me. Then consider this my notice, he said. We will tell the judge you are a danger to yourself. We will say you have been giving money away to strangers. We will say you forget the stove on. We will say whatever we need to. Hannah did not correct him. She watched me like someone measuring a wall for a picture she knows will not hang straight. We will be in touch, she said, which is what people say when they mean the opposite. I slid a single sheet under the door to them, the one I had written the night before. It was short and formal. It named my lawyer. It instructed them to direct all future communication to counsel. It noted that any in-person visit would be treated as a violation of my request for no contact outside legal channels and would be logged. Matt snatched the paper and crumpled it without reading. See you in court, old man, he said. His voice had dropped all the heat and kept only the cut. They turned down the steps. Hannah paused and touched the mailbox as if it might answer a question. She did not look back. They walked to a car I recognized as leased by the way it flashed and apologized. I did not move until the street noise swallowed them. Then I opened the storm door and picked up the two coffees. Both had my name written in blue marker on the lid in Hannah's tidy hand, Robert, and the R had a small flourish at the tail the way her third-grade teacher had taught her. I set them on the counter and watched the steam thin. I wrote the time and 3 sentences in my notebook: mail hold admission. Guardianship threat. Affidavit of gift offered. I called the non-emergency line and asked for a welfare check on my house to be logged as a courtesy. 2 family members had come by uninvited after an order was served. The dispatcher gave me an incident number, and I wrote it down. Then I called my lawyer and read my notes slowly, exactly, without embellishment. He said, full steam, and I said, yes. After I hung up with my lawyer, I stayed by the phone a while listening to the line go quiet like a pond after a thrown stone. The 2 coffees on the counter had cooled into the same temperature as the room. My name on the lids, Robert, looked like a label on something for storage. I rinsed them out and stacked them by the sink, then wrote one more line in the notebook. They brought my name like a prop. I replayed Hannah's offer, life estate, we managed the asset, and felt the old ache that comes from realizing someone knows your soft spots and is willing to press them. A life estate is a velvet rope across your own doorway. You can stand there and wave at your house forever while someone else handles the keys. When I first learned the term years ago, I thought it sounded dignified. This morning it sounded like being slowly folded into a drawer. The guardianship threat sat heavier than the deed. I could hear the cadence of it, the way people who have not done the reading say medical words like they are magic. Confused, competency, evaluator. I pictured Hannah practicing the sentences in a mirror and Matt adding a flourish at the end. I felt anger start up in my chest and then I set it down like a hot tool. I did not need anger, I needed paperwork. I called my surgeon's office and asked for a short letter on letterhead stating my post-operative medication dates and the end of narcotics. The nurse put me on hold, came back, and promised it by noon. Next I called my primary care doctor and scheduled a same-day cognitive screen, nothing dramatic, just the kind that prints out a score you can staple to the front of a file. While I waited, I wrote a list of people who had spoken to me in complete sentences in the last month: the bank manager, the clerk at the recorder's office, the neighbor who watched me mow in straight lines last week. If this turned into a question about my mind, then strangers who have no reason to lie would answer it. I stood at the pantry door and ran a finger lightly over the pencil marks where Hannah used to insist she had grown. For a second, I let myself see the girl with the crayons and the boy with the kite instead of the adults on my porch with a threat in a folder. That second ended, and I turned back to the table. I wrote the word guardianship in capital letters and drew a box around it. Underneath, I listed what would meet it head-on: doctor's letter, cognitive test, medication log, witness list, dated notes, incident number. Then I drew a second box labeled noise and left it empty on purpose. Not every arrow deserved a target. I locked the storm door again and stood in the entryway listening to the house breathe. Somewhere in there, I could still hear the morning my wife and I decided this was our forever address, the bright certainty of two people who believed they could outwork time. I could also hear what I would say at the hearing if anyone asked whether I wanted to settle. I would say I wanted the facts read into the record where lies cannot root, file numbers and timestamps, signatures and stamps, withdrawals and terminal IDs. I would say I wanted quiet more than victory and that the only path to quiet ran straight through the middle of the truth. A part of me, small, stubborn, counted what neutrality would have looked like if they had arrived different this morning. Empty hands. No folder. No guardianship. An apology with nouns in it: we took, we forged, we are returning. I would have listened. I would have allowed a path that did not involve a bailiff. But there are doors you close yourself and doors that are closed for you. They closed this one when they tried to name my competence like it was theirs to give. I called the notary board and asked how to file a complaint. The woman on the line sounded tired and fair in equal measure. Attach the certified copy of the deed and any handwriting analysis you have, she said. Dates help. I smiled despite myself. Dates I had. I added a tab to the binder and wrote notary in block letters. Then I opened a blank document on the computer and typed out a short statement with the same clean language I planned to use in court. Emotion has a place. It is not on page 1. I set 2 more appointments, one with a locksmith to rekey the garage and shed, for neatness of soul more than necessity, and one with a safe company to bolt a small one to the floor of the bedroom closet. This was not paranoia. This was ordinary maintenance after a storm. When my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "We can still make this easy, Dad," I did not answer. I screenshotted it, saved it to a folder named Screens, and wrote the time in my notebook. The notebook was already earning its keep. It had become a spine for the day, every call a rib, every document another bone. I thought of Lily and wrote her name on the top of a fresh page. Under it I wrote, simply, "Protect her routine." My fight would not touch her piano lessons or her bedtime. If the day ever came when she asked why the locks changed and the voices got small in hallways, she would get the version with facts and kindness, not the version with sharp edges. By mid-morning, sunlight laid itself across the table in a clean rectangle. I sat inside it and counted my choices again to make sure I could live with them. I could. I would not chase my children across texts. I would not argue on porches. I would not bargain in driveways. I would keep my promises to the younger versions of them and my promises to the older version of me. The court would see what had been done. The bank would undo what could be undone. The county would correct its book. And my home would be boring again, which is the sweetest word a house can earn. The doorbell did not ring again. The coffee smell finally left the kitchen. At noon, the surgeon's letter arrived by email and I printed 2 copies. The doctor's office confirmed the cognitive screen for 3 o'clock, and I set the binder on the chair by the door so I would not forget it. On a sticky note I wrote one last sentence and pressed it to the inside cover, where my hand would find it at the hearing. Speak low. Read dates. Do not explain what the evidence already says. Then I locked the door behind me and stepped into the day I had made. The call came from the school office just after lunch. Piano club was cancelled. Could I pick up Lily? My name was still on the list. Bring your ID, the secretary said, her voice busy and kind. I took the binder off the chair by the door and set it on the table, then picked up my wallet and keys. The school smelled like pencil shavings and floor cleaner. In the office, a goldfish circled a plastic castle with workmanlike patience. I signed my name on the clipboard, the same loop I have used since the children were small, and slid my driver's license across the counter. She was very excited when we told her, the secretary said, and looked at me like she understood more than she would say. Lily burst through the door from the hallway with her backpack half-zipped in glitter on her shoelaces. Grandpa, she said, the word shaped like relief. She stopped to check the rules, eyes to the secretary, then to me, then leaped anyway. She still smells like crayons if you catch her hair at the right angle. Can we do the song with the hard part? She asked before we had cleared the parking lot. In the car, I kept the radio low and the speed kinder than the limit. She talked about a science experiment that went wrong in a funny way and how Mrs. Carr says practice is just slow courage. She saw the small ring of new keys on my belt and touched them with one finger. These are shiny, she said. They are, I said. I made the lock stronger. Grown-up house chores. She nodded like I had told her the weather. Can you come to my recital? She asked. Mom said maybe. Dad said probably. I want a yes. Yes, I said, and put it on my list in my head the way I would later in the notebook, underlined, with the time. At home, I made grilled cheese and cut the sandwiches into triangles because that is the way triangles taste best to small people. She set her cup too close to the edge and then moved it back without being told. While the soup cooled, she found the piano by herself and worked methodically through scales, the careful lift of her wrists so much like her mother's neat hands at a cutting board that it made a place under my ribs hurt and then warm. When she finished the hard part, she waited for the last note to stop ringing before she turned. Again, she said, not to me but to the piano. Then she laughed once, proud but not loud. Mrs. Carr says not to clap until the sound sits down, she explained. We sat at the table with paper and a bowl of markers. She drew the house with a roof that looked like a hat and put 2 windows for eyes. I did not correct the number of steps to the porch. Accuracy is for the other piles on my table. When she finished, she wrote in slow, block letters across the top, Grandpa's house. She paused, tongue at the corner of her mouth, then drew a small key next to the front door and colored it gold. So it knows it is safe, she said. I put the magnet shaped like an apple on the new drawing beside the old one. The 2 papers overlapped at the corner like hands. Is Mom at work? I asked. Meetings, she said, with the dismissal of a person who has heard the word enough to know it means later. Dad too. He said he is closing something. She took a bite of sandwich and then offered me a triangle from her plate. You can have mine if you want, she said, pure generosity and no lesson. I have plenty, I said. You keep yours. She watched me gather the plates and dry my hands on the same towel I have used for more years than it deserves. Are you sad? She asked, sudden and direct. Children do not believe in soft approaches. I did not lie. A little, I said. Adult things got tangled, and I am working to untangle them. Like my necklace, she said. You put it on the table and pull one piece at a time. If you pull hard it makes knots. That is right, I said. I looked at her, at the light on her hair, at the straightness of her small back. I am pulling carefully. She considered this, then stood on tiptoe to put her cup in the sink without spilling. When she came back, she opened her backpack and pulled out a purple plastic pig with a slotted back. I have $11, she said. We can fix it. I put the pig on the shelf where it could watch us and shook my head. Your job is piano and recess, I said. Mine is the rest. Okay, she said, and accepted this as a reasonable division of labor. She dug for a permission slip and a ribbon and a rock she hoped was a fossil. We arranged them in a small parade along the edge of the table. When she practiced again, she slowed down for the tricky measure on purpose and then made it through clean on the third try. She did not cheer. She touched the keys a second longer like you do when you thank a thing for doing what you asked. Before I drove her to Mrs. Alvarez's, the after-school plan when parents run late, I sent a short email to the office secretary confirming pickup and drop-off times, copied to my lawyer because habit builds fences. At Mrs. Alvarez's door, Lily turned and squeezed me with more strength than you expect from a hand that small. See you Thursday, she said. Yes. Yes, I said again, the same word on two different ledgers. Back at the house, I wrote the time in the notebook and added 2 lines. She drew a key on the drawing. $11 in the pig. They were not evidence. They were measurements of something I had almost talked myself out of believing. Not all hope is a plan. But hope is why the plan matters. I walked the hallway once more before the doctor's appointment, past the pencil marks on the pantry door, past the framed photo from a fairground where my late wife is laughing hard enough to blur. The house felt less like a case file and more like what it had been built to be, quiet, useful, good. My anger had not gone. It had simply moved into a smaller, sharper box where it could do its job. The edges softened when I thought of Lily's careful wrists above the keys. On the way out, I lifted the purple pig from the shelf and put it back in her backpack for Thursday. People should keep what belongs to them. Then I checked the envelope, checked the binder, and locked the door behind me with the new key. The turn felt steady. The next part would be difficult and dull and necessary. And somewhere inside all that, a girl I love was learning to let a sound sit down before she moved on. Before dusk I cleared the table and built the binder into a thing that could stand on its own legs. Tabs in order: timeline, bank, recorder, notary, medical, guardianship threats, communications, remedies. At the front I slid a one-page index with clean headings and page numbers in pencil so I could change them if I had to. Behind timeline I stacked a simple sheet: dates, times, places, no adjectives, only what happened and when. Bank held the statements, the camera request form numbers, and the manager's letter on letterhead. Recorder held the certified copies of the quitclaim and the parcel summary, plus a photo of the notary seal where it blurred at the edge. Notary held the complaint cover sheet, already filled, and a stamped envelope. Medical held my surgeon's letter ending narcotics and a fresh cognitive screen with a score printed neat and black. Guardianship threats held my notes from the porch and the incident number from the welfare check. Communications held screenshots and a printout of the family thread with the day I asked and the day I was answered with an emoji. Remedies held the temporary order, the hearing notice, and 2 blank stipulations my lawyer had drafted, one for full restitution with fees and one for agreed-upon no contact. They were there in case the universe offered sense at the last minute. Sense rarely arrives, but a man can set a chair for it. I made a thin packet for opposing counsel, duplicates of what the court would see, arranged the same way and clipped with a blue paperclip so it would not be mistaken for mine. I wrote our case caption in block letters on the first page and said it out loud twice until it felt ordinary to hear my name in that sentence. I ironed a white shirt and set my tie, navy, plain, over the chair back. I polished my old shoes until they remembered being new. In the mirror I knotted the tie slowly, the way my father showed me, the way I showed Matt when he was 12 and hated standing still long enough to learn. On the nightstand I placed a small bottle of water, 2 knee pills, and my wallet with my license tucked where a clerk could find it without my help. The new keys went into my right pocket, their weight a small, honest tug. Lily's new drawing, the house with the gold key, went into the binder as a bookmark, not for court but for me. It would separate timeline and remedies. I wanted to touch it before I spoke and after I finished. I called my lawyer once more, not to ask for reassurance, but to confirm the plain details that make mornings run. Arrival time. Which courtroom? Whether the judge preferred exhibits labeled at the top or bottom. Where I would sit. Whether I should expect to be sworn. He answered each question with the calm of a man who favors rules over weather. Bring the binder, he said. Bring yourself. Speak low. I stood in the hallway and looked at the pencil marks on the pantry door. They have not changed in years, though I still look. I put one palm flat against the cool wall and said, "This is my home." Saying it did not make it truer, it made me ready to defend it without apology. I slept and dreamed of ordinary chores. In the morning I woke before the alarm, me quiet, house quiet. I made eggs I did not finish and poured coffee I did. I placed the binder, the packet for counsel, and a legal pad with 3 sentences at the top into a plain canvas bag. Speak low. Read dates. Do not explain what the evidence already says. I slid a blue pen into the spiral. I checked the windows, checked the back door, checked the stove. I am not forgetful. I am thorough. There is a difference. On the porch I let the air decide the day, cool, bright, untroubled by my business. I locked the door and felt the click land in the right part of my chest. In the car I set the bag in the seat as if it were a passenger who deserved care. At the light on Maple I practiced the first sentence I would say if asked to speak. Good morning, Your Honor. On this date, my account showed, I did not practice anger. I practiced sequence. I parked 2 blocks from the courthouse under a plane tree that had not yet decided whether it was fall. I put 2 quarters in the meter and took a photo of the number, then wrote it down. Inside the lobby, security asked me to place my bag on the belt. The binder looked almost handsome on the gray rollers. My keys chimed in the tray and came back warm to my hand. Up the stairs I went, taking them steady, left knee careful, right knee patient. At the landing I stopped, not for breath, but to feel the moment stand still for a count of 5. A deputy passed with a stack of files and nodded the nod of people who carry other people's days. Outside the courtroom door my lawyer met me with a thin folder and a pen I did not need. He asked how I felt. Ready, I said, and I heard that I meant it. He smiled the small smile of a person who knows what that word costs to say and does not spend it for you. We took a bench. Across the hall a copier clicked like a distant metronome. I opened the binder to Lily's drawing and let my thumb rest on the little gold key for one slow breath. Determination is not fire. It is weight. It is the weight you decide to carry on purpose because the alternative is letting someone else put it on you crooked. I closed the binder and faced the door. Whatever arrived would be met with dates and signatures, not volume. If cents did not show, the order would. If apology did not come, the clerk's stamp would. And when it was done, I would walk out the way I came, keys in my right pocket, binder in my left hand, my name still mine. Courtrooms have their own weather. This one was cool and dry, the kind of air that keeps paper flat. The walls were the color of old cream. A clock above the door ticked with a patience that did not belong to anyone in the room. I sat at counsel table with my lawyer and placed the binder in front of me, Lily's drawing tucked between timeline and remedies where my thumb could find the little gold key without looking. Hannah and Matt came in together with a woman in a slate suit I did not know. Hannah's hair was pulled tight into a knot that made her look efficient and tired. Matt's tie was new and knotted a fraction too short, a small flag of inexperience. He saw me and smirked, then he saw the judge's bench and the smirk fell off like a loose button. They sat at the other table. Matt bounced his heel. Hannah stared at the counsel nameplate and then down at her lap as if it could teach her something. The clerk called the case. Wood creaked as everyone stood. The judge entered without hurry, a man with a face like a plain door, no decoration, all-purpose. We sat again on his nod. He looked at the file a long moment before he looked at us. Appearances, he said. My lawyer gave his name. The woman in the slate suit did the same, for the respondents. She used the word family twice in the first sentence, as if it were a charm. The judge looked at me. Mr. Keene, good morning. Good morning, Your Honor, I said. Yes. He nodded once and turned to the other table. Counsel, I have read the pleadings and the declarations. I see a duly recorded quitclaim deed, a temporary restraining order already granted, a bank freeze letter, and a series of large withdrawals. I also see allegations of incapacity. He let that last word sit in the air until it cooled. We will take the injunction first. My lawyer stood, even voice, no wind-up. Your Honor, our request is straightforward. Convert the TRO to a preliminary injunction, maintain Mr. Keene's exclusive possession of his home, bar any transfer or encumbrance pending the quiet title action, and order the respondents to provide a full accounting and cease contact outside counsel. He slid the bank manager's letter, the certified deeds, and my surgeon's note to the clerk in neat sequence. We have also attached a cognitive screen Mr. Keene took yesterday. He is oriented and competent. Respondent's guardianship thread appears in Exhibit G, along with a transcript of a text message this morning, Exhibit H. The judge read quickly, the way people read when they know where the important parts will hide. All right, he said. Counsel for respondents. The slate suit stood. Her voice was confident in a way that did not account for the paper on the judge's desk. This is a family misunderstanding. My clients acted out of concern. They believed they were simplifying Mr. Keene's affairs during a period of recovery. Any funds used went to household necessities and improvements. As to the deed, the signature is valid, and we can provide a notary's stamp. The stamp is in the file, the judge said, without looking up. Whether it is valid will be addressed in the title proceeding. Today is about preserving the status quo. She pivoted. Then a life estate is appropriate. Mr. Keene remains in the residence, my clients manage the asset so it is not neglected. That balances interests. My lawyer did not sigh, though I could feel the temptation rise in him. Your Honor, a life estate is a transfer. The TRO prohibits transfer. Respondents cannot obtain by stipulation what they attempted by forgery. The judge shifted his gaze to Hannah and Matt. Did either of you authorize holds on Mr. Keen's mail? Hannah swallowed. There was a hold, yes, so nothing important would be left outside while he recovered. Did either of you alter email filters associated with his bank account? Matt moved his mouth and then did not speak. The slate suit hovered a hand near his arm like a traffic officer. We do not have information on that at this time, she offered. The judge set his pen down. Counsel, guardianship is a serious petition. It is not a lever for property disputes. He lifted the surgeon's letter from the stack and pinched it delicately, as if to avoid smudging the ink. I have contemporaneous medical evidence that Mr. Keen is no longer on narcotics and a cognitive score within normal limits. If your clients intend to pursue guardianship, they should be prepared to explain their basis without adjectives. The slate suit's eyes flicked to Hannah. Hannah pressed her lips together and looked as if she had been asked to carry a box she could not lift. Here is what we are going to do, the judge said, and you could feel the room draw toward his voice. The TRO is converted to a preliminary injunction. Mr. Keen retains exclusive possession of the residence. Respondents are enjoined from transferring, encumbering, or entering the property, and from accessing any of Mr. Keen's financial accounts. The county recorder is directed to place an administrative hold on any filings affecting the parcel pending resolution of the title action. A lease pendens will issue. He turned a page. The bank will provide terminal photographs and location logs associated with the disputed withdrawals directly to counsel within 10 days. Respondents will produce a written accounting of all funds withdrawn or transferred from Mr. Keen's accounts in the last 60 days, with receipts, within 14 days. No contact outside counsel. Violations will be addressed swiftly. The slate suit started to speak. The judge lifted one finger. Counsel, you will have your turn. He looked at my lawyer. As to the deed, I am not adjudicating validity today. However, Mr. Keen's handwriting sample and the notary complaint are in the record. I note the date of recording coincides with the period of postoperative recovery. The quiet title action is set for a case management conference in 30 days. If the parties wish to stipulate to relief before then, they may, but the court will not be used to sanctify an improvident transfer dressed as estate planning. Only then did he look back to Hannah and Matt. You will take these orders seriously, he said, calm as weather. There will be no guardianship filings absent competent evidence. There will be no further attempts to manage Mr. Keen's affairs. If you intend to make restitution, you will do so through counsel and in verifiable form. Do you understand? Hannah nodded once, a clipped movement. Yes, Your Honor. Matt opened his mouth. The slate suit touched his sleeve. Yes, she said for him. Good, the judge said. He signed twice, handed pages to the clerk, and rose. We are in recess. The gavel did not bang. The moment ended with the soft sound of chairs and paper and a rustle of people remembering their own gravity. My lawyer slid the signed order toward me. I read the top line, "It is hereby ordered," and felt the words land with the weight of the morning's promise. He leaned in. We will file the lease pendens this afternoon. The bank will cooperate. I will handle communications. Across the aisle, Matt shoved his chair back harder than he meant to and left a black scuff on the floor. Hannah gathered her bag with that same tidy efficiency and did not look at me. Their lawyer spoke quickly to them in a low voice, hand movements small and precise. When they turned to go, Hannah glanced once at my binder. Her eyes found the corner of Lily's drawing peeking out, the little square of gold key. Something changed in her face, a flicker, nothing more. Matt tugged her elbow and the moment passed. In the hallway, the copier clicked its clean rhythm. I put the order into the binder under remedies and slid the pen back into the spiral. My lawyer handed me a card with the hearing date circled and a small checklist: bank, recorder, notary complaint. "We keep walking," he said. We stood for a moment outside the courthouse doors while the day decided whether to be bright. People passed carrying their own folders, their own names and captions they had not asked for. I reached into the binder and touched the edge of the drawing. Determination is not a shout, it is a steady hand on a small, important thing. My phone buzzed. A number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail and opened a text that arrived a second later from the same line: "We can talk. We can make this easy." The words did not reach me. I took a screenshot, filed it in screens, and wrote the time in my notebook. On the walk to the car, my knee reminded me it was there, but not rudely. I dropped 2 more quarters into the meter, not because I needed the time but because I wanted the record to show I paid for my space. At the light on Maple, a school bus turned the corner and a row of small faces slid past, each one intent on its own window. I thought of Lily's careful wrists above the keys and the way she waits for a sound to sit down before she moves on. Back home, I set the binder on the table and put the signed order under the magnet shaped like an apple. The kitchen looked like itself. I boiled water and made tea I intended to finish. I opened my notebook and added a new heading: after orders. Under it I wrote the simplest sentence I have written in weeks: "The house holds." Then I underlined it once, slow, the line straight. 3 weeks later the courthouse felt warmer, or maybe that was just the way the clerk smiled when she took our stipulation. She stamped the top sheet with a red date that bled a little at the edges and slid it into the file like she was tucking in a child. The hallway smelled faintly of toner and old carpet. My lawyer and I waited on a hard bench under a brass plaque that listed rules everyone already knew. When the clerk called our case, we stepped into a conference room with a table too big for the business at hand and a window that looked onto a brick wall. The quiet title conference lasted 11 minutes by the clock above the door. The judge read quickly, then took off his glasses and looked at the other side. Respondents, through counsel, stipulated that the quitclaim was void. Their lawyer used the words "administrative confusion" and "intent to assist," and the judge let the words fall to the floor on their own. He signed an order that used the words "restore" and "fee simple" and directed the recorder to correct its book, noting the instrument number of the forged deed as if it were a tag on a mis-shelved library book. "The notice of pending action is dissolved upon recording," he said, which is the long way of saying the lease pendens lifted the same afternoon. At the recorder's office, the clerk behind the glass window printed a fresh parcel summary and circled my name with a highlighter. "Back where it belongs," she said, a sentence that should be stitched on pillows. I kept the receipt because paper has a way of remembering even when people do not. 2 days later, a letter from the notary board arrived in a long envelope that looked official enough to straighten your back. They had acknowledged my complaint and opened an investigation. The next morning, a second letter followed: her commission suspended pending review. I did not smile. I put the letters in the notary tab and wrote the dates in my notebook. Some reckonings do not need applause. The bank produced terminal photographs with timestamps the way a good bakery produces bread: warm, necessary, no ornament. The images were not movie clear: a shoulder in a dark jacket turned just so, the rim of a cap, the edge of a familiar shoe, a license plate caught in a reflection. But the numbers were clean. 317 at the Cedar Street vestibule. 1452 at the grocery kiosk in the next county. 2 withdrawals, then a third, each the same round amount. A detective I never saw sent a short note to my lawyer, funds traced, reversals initiated where possible, remainder to be repaid per civil order. 3 sentences, no adjectives, the kind of writing that moves money. Numbers began to behave. 612,000 came back by reversal, line items that used to look like bytes now marked credit. The rest arrived as certified checks drawn on a trust account with a name I did not recognize but a routing number that made sense. They came in a large manila envelope with a cover letter that called me, sir, and spelled my middle initial right. Interest and my attorney's fees were stapled to the end like neat stitches, small, necessary pain to close something that needed closing. No guardianship petition was ever filed. The threat had been air. My surgeon's letter and the test score sat in a file anyway, 2 quiet witnesses that never had to take the stand. I left them there for the same reason you leave a jack in the trunk, because roads are roads. We drafted a consent judgment at a table that rocked on one leg. Terms, simple and exact, no contact outside counsel for 1 year, then only by letter, no access to my accounts ever again, no third-party management of any asset with my name on it, any violation converts the unpaid balance of fees into a lien with interest, no discussion of the case with Lily or in her hearing, by either side. I signed my name once, the way I have signed it for 40 years, and slid the pen back across the table. Their lawyer signed twice, expression careful, a person refolding a map they did not enjoy using. Hannah and Matt did not come. That, too, was a kind of signature. Back home I recorded one more paper, a new deed into a trust with a dull name and uninteresting rules, the Keene House Trust, dated this day, Trustee Robert L. Keene. I named a corporate successor for when I am gone so that no holiday argument could tilt the roof. The trust said boring things that matter, no loans against the house, no distributions to anyone who has taken from me without returning it, no early gifts, automatic replacement of a trustee who cannot serve, property taxes paid on schedule from a separate account that holds more than it needs and never less. I printed a 1-page letter of instructions a stranger could follow on a winter Tuesday and put it behind the first tab. I updated my will. I did not write their names into it. I wrote Lily's, with conditions that look like guardrails, not gifts, nothing until 25 except education, no cash without receipts that explain it to a future version of herself, and the house held in trust for her use one day, not her leverage. I left a note for her that began with, someday, and ended with, be kind to what you keep. That evening I went to a school auditorium that smells like floor polish and applause. You can tell who tuned the piano because it either hums like a refrigerator or sits inside the room as if it were always there. This one sat just right. I took a seat in a row of plastic chairs that have rocked generations of knees. Parents whispered the way people pray. On stage, children were small and brave in equal measure. When it was Lily's turn she walked to the bench with her careful back straight and her hair pinned with a ribbon someone else had tied too tight. She found middle C without looking, placed her fingers like she was shaking hands with the instrument, and met the hard measure the way she had practiced, slower, then sure. She waited until the sound sat down before she stood to bow. When she found me in the crowd, she lifted the program like a flag and grinned with all her teeth. For a second, I was just a grandfather in a school chair, which is an office I intend to hold. On the drive home the night made the streets clean and reflective. She swung her feet and told me which notes were her favorites as if they were cousins. Is the house okay? She asked at a red light, plain as weather. I told her the truth. It is, I said. It holds. She nodded like she had expected that answer all along and went back to comparing the middle pedal to a secret path. At home I put a new drawing on the fridge, another house, another small gold key. This time she drew 4 windows so everyone could see out. I brewed tea in the old kettle, the one that boils fast and sighs when you tip it. The binder went to the top shelf with the other finished jobs, taxes, warranties, a manual for a lawn mower I no longer own. I slid the signed order under the magnet shaped like an apple because good news deserves a place to sit for a while. I walked the rooms and turned off lights with the ease of a man who knows where every switch lives. At the pantry door, the pencil marks waited like always. I put my finger where Hannah's 8-year-old height had been and left it there until I could feel the wall cool my skin. Some things do not move, even when everything does. I stood in the doorway of the living room and listened. Houses make their own music when you let them, the small breath of the refrigerator, the wood adjusting in the evening, the soft complaint of a register. I have learned that revenge, when you do it right, is only this: you return what was bent to straight, and you make it stay. You do it with paper and patience and the kind of quiet that cannot be mistaken for weakness. I locked the door and slipped the keys into my pocket. The house breathed its ordinary evening breath. Tomorrow there will be toast crumbs and a coffee cup and a piano scale that pauses in the same place and starts again. There will be mail addressed correctly and bills paid on purpose and a drawing on the fridge that can stay until the tape gives up. The house holds, and so do I.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.